Woo! So, thank you very much for coming along, for listening to me, for staying put. I'm one of the co-founders of Jumping Rivers, and we're based in this building. We're sort of 4 floors up. And I also got roped into writing a book a few years ago about efficient R programming. Now, lots of people are coming up here and saying, well, we're not, they're not a security person. I'm really not a security person, right? So my background's in statistics and data. Now nobody pays me to do statistics, so it's now in machine learning and AI, because that's where all the money is. And sort of has implications. And as I said, I co-founded this company called Jumping Rivers. So some Jumping Rivers key facts, right? So everyone in the company uses Linux, so there's 15 of us. And we've managed to get away with everyone from the person doing HR to finance, everybody uses Linux. And as a startup, that did help with a little security of how do you get people to upgrade Windows and viruses and all that stuff. It's not perfect, obviously, but it is possible. We're not a water-based company, regardless of the names. We have no company as such. And we're the winner of the most mysterious name ever competition. And we also have an amazing selection of coasters. So if you want some swag, there's some coasters at the front here. We bought around about 5,000 of these things 2 weeks before COVID hit, and then they were in every room of my house. So they're propping up desks, chests of drawers, everything. So grab some coasters. We've got another 4,980 up in the office, so feel free. So what does Jumping Rivers do? Well, we do lots of data science, we do lots of machine learning. So we typically go and help companies, and they've got data, and it's like, we have gathered data, what can we do with it? And you usually say not very much because you need to do it properly, but that's a whole other talk. So we do lots of that. We do lots of training. We do lots of R and Python. I'm going to be telling you a bit about R because I suspect most people haven't heard. And we do some managed services. So we're a data science, machine learning, AI type company. We're a consultancy, and we do lots of training and that sort of stuff. So, one other thing, we've also got a junior sort of mid-level sysadmin place, so if you're interested in that, grab me at some point afterwards. So on to the talk. Does anyone know who this chap is? Getty Images, yes. So that's Getty on the left and Mr. Images on the right, but he also goes by the name of Ryan Clark. And he hacked the CIA. And I like this picture because that's his mum taking him to court. And it just astounds me that you can hack the CIA and need your mum to take you to court, right? As someone who's not involved in this industry, not a security, that shouldn't happen, right? CIA should be good, right? You might be able to hack someone, but not the CIA. They should know this stuff. And I've got a very modest security goal, right? So I've got a very modest security goal. And my modest security goal is I only want to get hacked by adults, right? So if you can't go for a drink with me after the end of this conference, you shouldn't be able to hack my computer, right? This is not a challenge, right? I'm just putting this out there. This is not a challenge, right? Because I think we all realize that that's what should be a really easy target of not being hacked by a 14-year-old or a 10-year-old happens all the time, right? And that, to me, scares the life out of me. That we can still talk about, nation-state actors, and then we get a bored, not even teenager being able to hack you at times. Right? That sort of stuff just shouldn't happen. It's just bonkers. Anyone know who this chap is? And that's not Getty Images' cousin either, before anyone shouts out. This fine man is the former Greek Minister of Security. And if you pay careful attention, he's got absolutely fantastic security practices, right? And his security practices revolve around a Post-it note, right? And there's two surprising things. Well, the first one's not going to be surprising because you know where this is going to go. The first is he's got his username and password, Minister, password 12345. But the most surprising thing is, why would you have to write this down, right? If you take a step back, if you have to write that thing down, you're in trouble, right? But anyway, we digress. So how secure is the world of data science, right? And by data science, I just mean anyone doing data-y things, right? I'm not machine learning, AI, whatever you want to do, how we make your money. So in this talk, I'm going to talk a lot about R, right? We do lots and lots of R. Who's heard of this language called R? Oh, not bad. How many people have programmed with a little bit of R? Probably people who did a maths and stats degree, maybe. So R is similar to Python, sort of, but not really. But if you sort of no idea what R is, just think of Python. It's an interpreted language. R is a domain-specific language, which means it's sort of aimed at doing statistics, machine learning, that sort of stuff. Am I getting a horrible buzzy thing? Or is it just, no? Okay. And so it's sort of like Python. So if you don't know what R is, just think Python. It's the same sort of workflow, that sort of, so. Anyone know where the name came from? So clearly it comes from the language S, right? So that was an obvious question, so it's clearly derived from S. And S was a language developed around about the late 1970s by AT&T labs. They did a lot of Unixy things. And there was the same bunch of people in that labs who had S for statistics, bundled that on to AT&T labs with Unix, and then it became popular. At some point, AT&T labs thought, why are we doing this for free? That's a bit stupid. Started charging lots of money, and then R came. R is the 14th most popular Stack Overflow tag, right? So you've not heard of it, but by sort of waving your hands, it's a reasonably popular language, right? Or it's a really badly documented language, take your pick, but we will go for popular. And it's not a competition, right? It's not a competition. And we're a nice bunch here, and we don't like language wars. But if we did, right, R beats C.NET, SQL Server, and Excel. Not that we're sort of going down language wars, because that's completely wrong, but we are better than them in terms of Stack Overflow tags. So it's a popular thing, right? So you might not have heard of it, but lots of people are using it, just not perhaps people that you know. Just a quick background. Research project, New Zealand, Auckland, released 1995. R-Core was formed 1997. Renowned version 4.1. Base R is very stable, right? So I can run my really pathetic code from 2001 still using base R. Python. So that, it is a well-maintained language. Really, the sorts of patches that goes into it is that they've got the 16th decimal place wrong in some bizarre statistical routine. That's the sort of thing we're going for, right? It's a sort of language for that. So let's get on to the talk. So one of the main IDEs that people use is something called RStudio, right? So it's a free open source product, and it's got enterprise level products. The person who developed this was a guy called J.J. Allaire, and he also wrote Cold Fusion, so you might have heard of that in the past. He's got a whole Wikipedia page, just one of these really clever chaps that can come up with ideas. And there's a desktop version, you can download it and install it. There's a server version, so you can launch it onto the cloud, and that's where we're going, right? So this is used by lots of people, right? This is sort of the main IDE. It's either this or Emacs, right? Which is trying to persuade someone to use Emacs when they've never touched it. It's hard. So RStudio Cloud, really easy to set up, right? You create a cloud account with some person who already knows everything about you, Google, AWS, whatever. You write a little bash. If you don't know bash, you can just Google and you can get a blog post that tells you exactly what to do. It requires very little technical skill, right? So you can get this IDE, you can put it on a cloud, and you can have almost zero technical skill. You need to know a little bit of programming, but you can just copy and paste half a dozen lines and you can get it up and running. You could probably even, get some Kubernetes stuff behind it without really knowing what you're doing, right? It's not that hard, sort of. And someone has kindly made a Docker, right? So if you know about Docker, people say, oh, Docker's wonderful, and then you go to Docker and it says Docker's easy. And if you've never come across Docker, 5 days later, after you've killed internet and your entire block, you finally get your head around Docker. And there's an image for AWS. And the default username and password here for these things was RStudio/RStudio. And in bold letters, they said, well, they didn't quite say this, don't be stupid, make sure you change your username and password. Right. So, what? Well, you go to the usual, you go to Shodan, you type in RStudio. This is an old image. There's now a few thousand hits out there. You get a whole bunch of RStudio sign-ins. You get where they're from. You get a username, you sign up here, and you think, what to do now? What to do? And you think, well, I listen to Darknet Diaries. I know CSI, but I'll take it easy before we go into the hardcore stuff. And so you try RStudio, and you try RStudio, and I did this a couple of years ago, and the very first one I got into, and it was, oh crap, I really didn't want to do this. And it was someone's proper serious work. Again, if you're using R, you've got data, right? That data could be patient data, financial data. You're not doing it just for fun and games. You tend to be doing it for sort of a real purpose. And to me, that doesn't seem like hacking. You know, that's at the level of schoolboy, schoolgirl. You know, it's that sort of level that a child could do it. And that's where we were. This has now changed. So this has been 18 months ago. So if you went and tried this now, hopefully no one is now no longer doing that because they now enforce a password change. But that's where we were. Bioconductor. So most people probably never heard of Bioconductor. Bioconductor is an R repository for genomics. So what that means is a whole bunch of packages, around about 1,200, and a package is like a module, add-on, that sort of stuff. And you would go to Bioconductor if you're doing genomics research, right? So if you're doing microarray analysis, RNA-seq, SNPs, not the sort of thing you think, oh, it's Saturday night, I think I'll crack out some Bioconductor, do a bit of microarray, right? Anyone doing this is a major university. The sorts of people that you know, this is serious stuff, right? You don't just do this for fun. And, well, how do you install Bioconductor? Well, installing Bioconductor is quite easy. You run this one command in R, right? So you run this command source, blah, 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 https, bioconductor.org, biosite.lite.r. Great. What does this mean? This means you're running an R script with full permission. That's the same as running a Python script with full permission. So it's like, here's my Python script, would you please run it in your system? Right? And you go, well, no, or at least you should. Right? So when you run that command, you're running an R script and it can do everything that a user can do. Right? You know, within 5 seconds, you can download a bunch of packages that could be ordering pizza from Domino's. Right? You can do everything you want as a user. Right? And this is equivalent to just logging onto your laptop and walking away. Right? So when you run that script, that's what you're doing. So do I trust Bioconductor? To be honest, yes. You know, you need to trust some people in the world, and the people that run Bioconductor are really clever people. You can look them up. You go, yep, they're smart folk. Yep, happy with them. So I trust Bioconductor. But do I trust myself? Well, the answer to that is no. Right? I don't trust myself, and I don't trust really anyone else, because we all make mistakes. And a year ago, I was really bored, so I made a few online purchases. I thought, well, what can I do? Well, I could buy Bioconductor. And then I could buy Biconductor, and then I could buy Bioconductor, and then you get the idea, and I bought all 13 misspellings for £100. You know, we're going for sophisticated attacks here, right? You know, this is what we're after. Do you think anyone hit these domains? And by hitting those domains, I mean they've mistyped that source command, so they can't spell Bioconductor. It's a tricky word. They can't spell Bioconductor, and then they just try to run an arbitrary R script that I could have put up. Well, the answer to this question is yes, people hit my domain. And these are unique IP addresses or unique IP hits over the course of a few months. So there's an average there's an average of 8 unique IP addresses. It turns out, would you believe that when something doesn't work, people keep going and going and going. You know, if at first it doesn't succeed, just keep hitting return. Right? And that's quite scary. Well, it petrifies me. And the sorts of organizations, you know, a hit means I could run an arbitrary R script. I got all top 10 universities in the world. Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, Harvard, the lot, right? All in the logs. I got every government you can think of. Any government that's worth it, it was in my logs, right? You know, all the big agencies from the UK, the US, Europe, China, anyone like that, they all are there. I think I got every single pharma company out there as well. Right? Now, just be honest, I only put up a 404. I didn't do anything whatsoever. You know, I just had an Apache monitoring logs, so there's nothing I did wrong. You know, I've just bought domains, looked at logs, nothing. But that's really scary, right? You know, someone who, you know, I don't know much about security. Every single pharma company in the world, you know, all the big ones. And again, why would a pharma company be accessing Bioconductor? Because they've been doing clinical trials, because they've been doing microarray, because they've been spending hundreds of thousands of millions, tens of millions of pounds in experiments. And what would you do, you know, if you were a bad person? If you were a bad person, the best that these pharma companies could hope for is ransomware, right? After that, things get a lot worse. You can steal your data. Perhaps even worse, change the data. You're developing a new drug, just change a few numbers. Let's spend hundreds of millions in this new drug. Let's, you know, potentially kill people. Right? You know, that's the bad things you can do. And that to me is a bit worse than ransomware, because it only requires a few digits changed in an Excel spreadsheet and you'll never catch it. You know, a little tweak here and there, easy. And that to me scares the life, right? You know, because I've done, you know, next to no sort of proper, you know, security. It's just buying a bunch of domains. Again, this has changed. So if you go to Bioconductor now, they make you do it something much more sensible, right? Even though this is no longer the way to install Bioconductor, I'm still getting hits all the time in these domains, which is a pain because I have to keep renewing that £100 every year, which is a pain in the rear end, but I feel responsible. And it's why, well, you get post-it notes for passwords, so you get post-it notes for how to install Bioconductor. And these post-it notes are getting passed down from student to supervisor. Oh, how do we install that again? Oh, here's a bit of paper, just run those commands. So even though this is no longer the process for doing this for the last 18 months, I'm still getting hits because it's a syndication site for lots of R posts. So if you're interested in R, go to R bloggers, and essentially it just sort of syndicates a bunch of our blog posts, right? So you can look through them and go, oh, that looks interesting, you can click on it, right? And so some of them are really, you know, this is even dull for me, testing rounded data for a circular uniform distribution, but then you've got all sorts of varieties of what people are using R for, you know, dashboards, whatever. Now, just suppose the most popular platforms out there for R. Suppose someone scanned the list of the contributing blogs, right? There's around about 750 of these things. So 750 people putting a blog out there saying, you know, here, grab my RSS feed, do that. And suppose someone then thinks, I could write a little for loop and see if any of them return a 404. And they get 43 blogs that return a 404, I'm guessing. And then someone purchases some of these domains that return a 404. And then someone creates a little quick blog post on how to write cool, sexy graphics, you know, something animation, you know, because we all like a bit of animation, some nice pastel colors. That's what really gets AI juices flowing. So we create a little blog post and that sort of stuff. Would people run arbitrary code just because it's on the internet? Clearly the answer is no. But unfortunately in this case the answer is yes. People would run arbitrary R code because it's on the internet. And what's even more sort of slightly insidious about this, the blogs that I was taking over had sort of Google juice already there. You know, again, it's not a particularly sophisticated attack. The blog was typically originally written by maybe a PhD student, and then they went and got a proper job, I suppose, and left the blog, and it just lapsed. But again, you know, the people using R, these aren't sophisticated attacks. And with almost no chance of being caught, you could get away with anything you want. The Bioconductor stuff's even more scary. If I was a bad person, what I would do is I would do something horrible to your laptop and then install Bioconductor for you anyway. You know, so you've got Bioconductor. That takes about 10 minutes. So you've got a sort of tolerance of a minute that no one would notice, right? So there's lots of really bad things you can do when installing code. Why is R so popular? Right? Well, R's really popular because something called CRAN. So CRAN's similar to PyPy. And if you go to Wikipedia, where we all do our best research, if we're honest, and you look up CRAN, you get calorie restriction for a dietary restriction, not this. We get telecommunication architecture, nope. we get, this is my favorite, a measurement of uncleaned herring. I think we should bring back the old imperial ways and just dump this SI nonsense right now and go back to crans for measures of uncleaned herring. So next time you're in Tesco, can I get 2 crans, please? But really, it's a package archive for R. And the way of picturing this, and this is a really good image because it does capture the sort of people behind it, is it's like PyPy except done properly. So when you submit a package to CRAN, that package is checked against R past, present, and future. It's checked against all operating systems you can think of. So Linux, Windows, Mac, Solaris, the bane of people's life, because who's got Solaris? 32-bit, 64-bit machines. It makes sure of, does it affect any dependencies, future, so it's all sort of really stable. It's got problems. And then a human might actually look at the code, right? So, it's good. And what it means is, like, installing packages is easy, right? I can type one command, I can give you one command on R to install a package. You don't need anything else, and it would automatically download all the dependencies and put them in the right place. Unlike Python, where I do a lot of Python, I don't know why I'm slagging it off, but it's just fun. Unlike Python, where I've got 4 versions of TensorFlow kicking about my laptop at various places, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's popular. And essentially the command is install.package, we put the package name, magic just works, okay? When you run this command, you're actually executing R code, so it's not just the same as getting some files and putting it over here. It's getting some files and then running code. Right? So technically, installing is a potential issue. Not technically, installing is a potential issue. Right? When you install a package, it could do anything at once. You have now given that package full, or the code in that package, it could do anything at once. Right? It could set up an FTP server, fire everything backwards and forwards across the internet, do what you want. And also, when you install a package, so that little orange blob is an R package. When you install that package, it grabs all the dependencies, right? So this package depends on R Markdown. R Markdown depends on CA tools. CA tools depends on bit ops. So you've got automatically works out this dependency graph and installs all that stuff, right? Which makes things a bit more tricky to reason about. So this is a project I've been working on. This has been working with Sonotype, and this essentially is trying to help here, right? It's trying to sort of, when you install a package or when you develop a package or when you've got a package in a CI pipeline, it will automatically essentially ping their index to see has there been a vulnerability in one of your dependencies. So it's trying to sort of get a handle of the package dependency graph. All right? So that's one of the start. One of the things that R does a lot is an R+ in JavaScript, right? So one of the things that R sort of caught on is being able to build a dashboard. So we can, in our training courses, we can take a bunch of people who have never coded before, and in around about 5 days, they can be creating sort of basic dashboards with some regression lines, interactive graphics, all using R, knowing no HTML, no CSS, right? So in 5 days. Of course, there's gaps in knowledge and all that, but that's the sort of level. And that's because essentially a lot of R packages now wrap a lot of the horrible JavaScript, and they might give you a nice R function. So rather than trying to write a JavaScript graph, which is clearly the better way of doing it, you could sort of wrap a simplistic view around in a little R function, say, give me a nice fancy graph widget, please. And it generates some JavaScript and does all that stuff. So there's lots of embedded C++ in JavaScript. And that's quite scary because JavaScript is scary, right? I'm sure all security vulnerabilities can be traced back to JavaScript. Well, it's obviously not true, but it sounds more fun. Now, technically, few security issues have ever been detected. Of course, no one's actually ever looked, which is perhaps part of the problem, right? So no one's sort of cared about this. And I'm certain that there's a lot of JavaScript kicking about in R packages because it essentially embeds jQuery, version last year, kicking about in it. It just sort of grabs some JavaScript, minimizes it, throws it in, and then forgets. And that's quite scary. So one final question. So would you ask IT to create dashboards? To create a TensorFlow AI model? To analyze data? Right? Most people think that's just stupid. Depending on your background, you think, that's not my job. That's someone else's job, not me. But most data scientists So we're working with a pharma company in the US, and it's 4 data scientists, really bright people. They're expected to know all of bioinformatics, some statistics, some machine learning, programming to quite a high level, Docker, AWS, setting up and maintaining a server, some Linux, and then they've got their day job. That's not possible for one or two people to know, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there. Would you believe it's not done well, right? It's not their fault. It's just, they're expected to know everything. But yet lots of data scientists are expected to secure web servers. They're doing dashboards. IT go, don't know about R. I've never really heard of this thing. Can we rewrite it in Java? I had that conversation yesterday, right? IT just wanted to rewrite something in Java because that's what they're familiar with. Like, well, no, not really. How can you rewrite an AI model in Java? Especially when I want to change it tomorrow. That's not how machine learning works. They're expected to look after security. By look after means they've no idea because it's never been in any course or anything they've ever thought about, so therefore they're looking after it by not knowing about it, which is possibly not the best strategy. They're expected to load balance applications as well, right? There's so many things that small teams are expected to do because they're sort of falling through the cracks. And again, I think a lot of the talks we're thinking about, and I love to first talk about, fridges attacking things. This stuff here, in my mind, is if you're going after someone who's using these sorts of tools, there's far more juicy targets than locking down someone and getting a few bitcoins, right? You could really screw a company over by just tweaking 1 or 2 lines of code that you would never notice. You target a bank, you go for a bank, you go for a mortgage, there's going to be some mathematical model, some API that's going to say whether or not you're going to get a mortgage. You could just tweak that a bit. Not major, so it is blatantly obvious, but maybe just sort of knock it down 10%. So now you're going to give a mortgage to perhaps someone you shouldn't have. Or you're going to give a loan to someone who possibly shouldn't have got a loan. Right? Really trying to detect that stuff would be really hard. Right? So depressing summary, I think there's lots of popular tech that IT don't understand. Right? Again, R is perhaps something you've never come across, or if you only come across it tangentially. But it's a really popular programming language. There's lots of people using it. Right? We've just trained 300 data scientists in the Scottish government. Lots of people are doing it. And R is secure, but can be made insecure. And it's just the same as anything else. Right? It's not, oh, don't use that. If only you use this, you'll be fine. Well, no. It's more the fact that typically there's understaffed departments. IT don't typically sit there drinking coffee and eating donuts. They're stretched. So they're getting a bunch of phone calls from data scientists who are trying to communicate. We need some sort of dashboard shiny thingy in this cloud. Is that the right phrase? I don't know. But we just want it and we need it now. Can you just do it tomorrow? And IT is saying, well, what are your requirements? What about RAM? RAM? What's that? Is that something we have with coffee? And so having that conversation is really hard. And what happens is you get insecure applications. So thank you very much. That's the end of my talk. Any questions, by all means, feel free to ask or grab me over lunch or any other time during the day. But thank you very much for your time.
Does anyone have any questions for Colin? Please raise your hand now. Anyone?
Anyone on the virtual stream?
There we go.
There we go.
We got a candidate. Sorry, I'm going to get really close and personal. Hello.
Hi there. Thank you for the talk, by the way. You mentioned earlier on you were buying a bunch of domains. How much does that actually set you back?
Those 13 cost £100 in total.
£100. How much did this cost at the start? Because I bought a few at the start of this year and you get like a deal for them.
Oh, so those domains were I bought all 13 for less than £100.
So 13 for £13, then came back a year and found out
yeah. In terms of being able to hack all pharma companies in the world, it's either a good or bad investment, depending on your point of view.
Anybody else have any questions for Colin?
I've just got something I'd like to say. I've never heard unclean herring in a talk before, so I think you get extra points for that. Anyone heard that before? No? Right.
Double points.
Yes, double points.
Please grab some coasters, because if you don't, I need to put them in my bag and then take them upstairs again, which is just a bit of a pain, to be honest.
Well, thank you. Oh, yeah, I have a question.
Oh, yep.
A late contender.
Hi, thanks for the talk. So at the start of the talk, when you were telling us about R, I've used it a little bit in the past, and you mentioned it's a domain-specific language for statistics. Couldn't there be an argument made that you shouldn't be putting that on a web server? And then you would avoid all of the issues with people hacking the web server.
There is, except it's not insecure. IT. If I was being R server, say IT just need to do it properly. You know, it's a bit of software. It's just like saying, well, WordPress. You know, it's not a difference of you can set up this stuff properly so there's a server. Data scientists can push the dashboard up to that server and it's all perfectly secure. You know, there's no reason why that's not, other than the fact that no one tends to take responsibility. Also, a lot of applications we deal with, if you're in a major government organisation, you're pushing dashboards, reports all the time, but they're purely internal, so they're surrounded by an intranet. Of course, there might be pulling in sneaky little bits of JavaScript that they didn't quite think of, but we won't even dwell on that part because that gets scary again as well. But yeah.
One more question down the front, and then I think that will be it.
Sort of related, really.
Oh, wait a minute. You did a Scotsman with a microphone.
Sort of related question. We do some data analytics work in our organisation, and we often that the analytics servers actually almost end up as shadow IT, because you end up having a department within the organisation that wants some analytics work, wants some AI, some machine learning. They have a budget for it. They don't want to involve IT.
Yeah.
And is that something that you've experienced and sort of contributes to this?
Yeah, yes would be the idea. And again, I suppose data scientists are incredibly technical. You know, you do have someone that knows about Docker, you have someone that knows how to set up servers. What happens is they can do that properly. Then they get bored and they go into the next shiny bauble because they don't want to do that. And that's what happens. We typically tend to, we now do a lot of managed services, so we now go in and say, not for everything, but for this particular stuff. And IT love us because it's like, great. And data scientists love us because, great, so that's the way we see things going. But yeah, it's exactly what you said, little shadowy domains. Universities are the worst. They have them all over the place.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's give one final round of applause for Colin.
Woo!